Some fights are legendary. Some fights entertain the crowd. And then there are fights that make Dana White wonder why he even showed up. From slow, frustrating title bouts to bizarre game plans, backstage drama, weird scorecards, and fighters who refuse to engage, these are the moments that push the UFC president to the edge. These are the fights that made him shake his head, walk away from the arena, skip press conferences, or go on rants that fans still quote today. So today, we're breaking down 10 fights that seriously pissed off Dana White, told in a fresh order, same fights, new flow, and a lot of behind-the-scenes energy. Let's get into it. Let's start with a moment Dana White later admitted he regretted Anderson Silva's final fight with Uriah Hall. When the UFC booked Anderson Silva's final fight, the goal was simple: give a legend a respectful send-off. But things went the opposite way. From the start, both fighters were hesitant. Anderson looked older and slower, and Hawley, out of respect, never pushed the pace. The fight dragged, the energy faded, and when Hall finally stopped Silva in the 4th round, the moment felt awkward instead of emotional. Dana wasn't mad at either fighter. He was mad at himself. He even admitted, "I don't feel good about myself. I never should have let Anderson fight again." For someone who has promoted thousands of fights, this was one he truly regretted. Moving on, we have another fight that left Dana shaking his head for a very different reason: Merab Dvalishvili versus Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo was the clear fan favorite in Salt Lake City. The crowd erupted every time he stepped forward. But this fight quickly became more about Merab Dvalishvili's choices than Aldo's performance. Merab shot 16 takedowns and landed almost none, while Aldo defended most of them. Neither fighter did real damage, and the fight mostly stalled against the fence. Fans wanted action. Dana wanted action. They didn't get it, but what really frustrated Dana came after the fight. When Merab was asked if he'd fight his close friend Aljamain Sterling for the belt, he said no. Dana immediately reacted, saying Merab didn't look like a guy who wanted a title shot. In Dana's eyes, turning down an opportunity like that kills momentum, and even though Merab won, that night set him back until he stacked more wins and Sterling eventually lost the belt. Next up is a matchup that had all the drama in the world until the cage door closed. I'm talking about Muhammad Mokaev versus Manelkape. Before they even stepped into the cage, everyone expected chaos from this matchup. There was trash talk, a confrontation at the Performance Institute, a sucker punch at the hotel, and they almost fought at the weigh-ins. Everything pointed to a heated war. Instead, they delivered one of the slowest fights of the night. No urgency, no big moments, and none of the emotion they'd built up. And when it ended, they hugged like nothing ever happened. Dana wasn't impressed. He called it a classic all-talk, no action situation, and was annoyed that, after causing problems at the hotel, the pie, and backstage, the actual fight ended up being completely flat. And speaking of frustration, nothing tested Dana's patience quite like CM Punk's return against Mike Jackson. The CM Punk experiment was already controversial after his first fight. Many thought it was over. But 2 years later, the UFC tried again, this time against Mike Jackson. Surprisingly, Punk held his own for a bit in round 1. After that, he took a beating. But what made Dana furious wasn't Punk. It was Jackson. Jackson had multiple chances to finish the fight, but didn't. He showboated. He coasted. He hit Punk without trying to end it. And the whole thing was so slow that Joe Rogan even joked that Jackson was paid to drag the fight out. Dana unloaded on him at the press conference. "He's a complete idiot. I regret giving him that opportunity." He even refused to call him Mike, saying he'd only call him Michael Jackson. This was pure frustration, the kind that makes Dana wish he could rewind the entire matchup and cancel it. From an awkward performance to a decision that shocked everyone at the table. The next moment comes from Brendan Loughnane's Contender Series fight. On the Contender Series, fighters know they have to impress Dana, not just win. Brendan Loughnane did everything right for almost the entire fight. He struck beautifully. He showed conditioning. He pushed the action. He looked UFC ready, but with 10 seconds left, instead of throwing punches, he shot a takedown, and Dana snapped. He literally threw his pen on the desk and said, "You've got to be kidding me." Brendan walked backstage thinking he had earned his contract, and instead, he was turned down in front of the cameras. The decision shocked fans. It crushed Brendan, but it also pushed him directly to the PFL, where he later won $1 million. This fight made Dana angry. But ironically, it changed a fighter's life for the better. After that controversy, we jumped to a fight that had fans and Dana White equally annoyed. Jose Aldo vs. Mario Bautista. Another Aldo fight, and another night that annoyed Dana. Fans wanted Aldo to shine. They always do. But Mario Bautista spent most of the fight holding Aldo against the cage, barely striking, barely attacking, and mostly stalling. 7 minutes of clinch time. 5 significant strikes, and then the judges gave Bautista the win. The crowd hated it. The UFC hated it. And Dana blasted everything. Fighters, refs, judges, and even randomly threw in a jab about Irish boxing. When Dana goes off like that, you know a fight left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and if you thought that one was frustrating. This next title fight took things to a different level. Tyron Woodley against Demian Maia. Tyron Woodley defended his title, but in the slowest way possible. Demian Maia couldn't land a takedown. Woodley barely threw any strikes, and the fight became a 25-minute staring match with rare moments of action. Dana was done, he said. They threw 60 punches. That's how bad that fight was. Worst of all, GSP was supposed to fight the winner. Dana immediately canceled Woodley's shot at the super fight. Right in the middle of the press conference, he chose Michael Bisping instead, for Woodley. This was probably the most expensive, boring performance of his entire career, but nothing compares to the confusion and chaos of the fight that came next. Clay Guida versus Gray Maynard. This might be the most bizarre main event ever. Clay Guida, usually a fan favorite, decided to run laps around the cage. Literally. He circled nonstop, hopped on his feet, dodged every engagement, and turned the fight into a strange cardio session. Even when the fight ended, he kept circling while they read the decision. Dana said, "This isn't Dancing with the Stars. This fight damaged Guida's momentum for years. He kept fighting, but he never headlined a main event again." After that bizarre performance, we moved to a title fight that left almost everyone disappointed. Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev. This wasn't horrible, but it was incredibly disappointing for a title fight. Jan started strong. Ankalaev dominated late. The judges called it a draw. Fans hated it. Ankalaev felt robbed, but Dana, he said he zoned out after round 3. He didn't want a rematch. He didn't want excuses. He decided right there on the spot to book a new title fight. Glover Teixeira versus Jamahal Hill. That's how annoyed he was when a main event for a title makes Dana check out completely. It's going on this list. And finally, we end with the most dramatic moment of all, the heavyweight clash between Francis Ngannou and Cyril Gane. Francis Ngannou defended his heavyweight title and finished his UFC contract. The champion was leaving. Dana had publicly clashed with him for months, and for the only time in UFC heavyweight history, Dana didn't put the belt around the champion's waist. He wasn't even there. He didn't show up to the post-fight press conference either. Francis later left the UFC, joined the PFL, and the two have traded shots ever since. Dana said, "I don't think about Francis that much, and he's not a good guy." This wasn't just anger about a fight. It was a full breakup between the UFC and one of the hardest hitters in MMA history, whether it came from slow fights, strange game plans, bizarre judging, unnecessary drama, or disappointing title bouts. These are the moments that push Dana White to the edge and sometimes change the direction of entire divisions. Every fight tells a story, but these fights told Dana a story he never wanted to hear again.